Here we are, back at it again. Another night, another video. And today, y'all know me. And if you've been rocking with me for a long time, man, then you know how I do. I just always had these different thoughts that go through my mind, that go through my head, and then I come here to chop it up with y'all to get y'all perspective and hear what y'all got to say. So I want to welcome y'all. Welcome to the show. All right. Welcome to the show. If you're watching this on Facebook, hit that like and follow button. All right. If not, then you might be watching this on YouTube. Hit that like and subscribe button. All right. Again, I appreciate it. You all appreciate it. So tonight, what are we talking about? We're talking about a very profound topic. I think a lot of people have asked this question if you grew up like me. If not, and you just grew up similar to me, you probably still ask this question, right? And that question is, are we made in God's image? Big, big, big question. It's something I've been pondering for a long time, right? Growing up, Southern Baptist in different churches, learning different things. The first piece of literature I was introduced to was the Holy Bible, right? So that's all I had to go off of. But as I got older, and then naturally you in school, you start learning about science and the nervous system, and you start learning about evolution, all these different things. Not that you necessarily believe in them, you may not. But you start to ask this question like, who is God? What is God? And are we really made in His image? Right? It says mankind, and I know a lot of people get made. They might get they feathers ruffled about that because of the times that we're in, but this is my thing. I always ask myself this question like, are we made in God's image? So that led me to ask a question like who and what God is. And it's three different perspectives that I can bring to you. Not that I'm taking a side of speaking from any of these specific perspectives. It's just that I did a little bit of gathering of information and knowledge myself, and I wanted to see like what exactly is all the literature saying? What exactly is everybody saying? What does everybody else think about this topic, right? So, without further ado, I'm gonna jump right into my discussion, man, and I'm gonna just start talking. Now, me personally, um, when you read it from the book, the King James version, the Bible, Torah, whatever you may follow, the Quran, and it's hundreds of religions out there. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but I'm gonna go through some of the most popular ones, right? And this is my thing, being made in God's image. If I had to be honest, because to me there are multiple genders on earth, it would have to be an androgynous being, right? If that makes sense. So I'm gonna give it to you first like this, because like I say, this is what I grew up on. This is what I knew first, and then I'm gonna break it down a little bit more. So in I think that the NIV is the New International Version of the Bible. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 to 27. It said, "Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness." Now that "our" to me, um, basically it's just not being funny. It confirmed what I had already thought. This has to be an androgynous being, right? Not one that we totally understand, or there has to be multiple, right? So if it's a monotheistic culture and it's one being, it has to be androgynous. That's just my perspective, right? Not saying it's right or wrong. That's just what I got from it, right? So God created mankind in His own image. That's that's kind of confusing to me, right? As a reader, in the image of God, He created them, male and female. He created them. So that's from the literature. That's what we get from the book, right? And that was me just taking that basic and most forefront information and introduction of who God is, and me trying to really just make a depiction of this being, right? Who we call God. Now, some may call him another name. Some may refer to God as something other than the He, right? Some religions believe in multiple gods. I'm not discussing all that tonight. I'm just discussing my perspective and what I think about the topic and how I'm answering the question. So, this is what I got from, the knowledge and the research that I did. What in God's image means, right? It has been interpreted in several ways. So it could be a spiritual or moral likeness. Humans have the ability to reason, right? We got free will. We have different powers than the other beings, right? We can make moral choices. We can act with love and we can act with justice, qualities that reflect God's nature. Now, that's a little bit deep, God's nature. That's another discussion. Now, relational likeness. Humans are made for relationships with God and others, just as God is relational. I do believe that. I believe higher than everything, what separates us from other beings is one, communication and language, but it's our ability to build, form, and maintain healthy and great relationships. Okay. Now, functional likeness. Humans are stewards of creation, representing God's rule on earth. That's a beautiful thing. But God's rule, to me, that would have to be another discussion as well, because that could mean a lot of things. If you're just going based on literature or you're going based on society or human nature, I think all of those things are something we would have to discuss at another time. Then we have intrinsic worth. Every human life has inherent dignity and value because it bears God's image. I believe that. I believe that. I believe that God, whatever the being is, does have dignity and has tremendous value, w- much further than ours, much more than ours, right? Because we have to be created in some things image. We have to be created after something, right? So that's why I believe that, every human life bears God's image. So point number two, here we go. In other religious or philosophical views, we can look at the Islamic perspective. This is something that I studied for maybe 2 or 3 years back in my undergrad, so it's been a while. But the Quran teaches that humans are God's vicegerents, like the Khalifa on earth, created with special honor and responsibility, though not necessarily in His image in a literal sense, since God is beyond all physical form. Like kind of like what I was saying before, if that makes sense. I believe God as a being has to transcend any physical form, right? There are certain deities, there are certain demigods that we've been introduced. If you understand um those terms from other literatures, then you understand where I'm coming from. But I do believe like God as a being does transcend all physical form. Then, in addition to point number two, we have secular or philosophical view. Now, the made in God's image can be seen metaphorically, expressing that human beings have unique capacities, like the ability to reason, creativity, or morality that gives us a special role in the universe, which is going back to what I was saying earlier, us being higher beings than others on earth, right? Not saying that we're more or less valuable, but it just gives us a higher role and it gives us a greater responsibility. Now, in short, in most theological interpretations, yes, humanity is made in God's image, but typically this refers to our moral, spiritual, and relational nature rather than just the physical form, right? Now we have the Roman Catholic view. So in the Roman Catholic view, I don't, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. Like I said, this is just what I'm gathering from my information. Humanity reflects God through reason, free will, and the capacity to love. So, like the catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraphs 355 through 357. This teaches that being in God's image means humans are spiritual persons capable of knowing and loving their creator, right? The image of God is not lost by sin, but it's wounded, hurt, injured. Grace restores it and elevates it. Okay. So what I gathered is Catholics often distinguish between image, which is our rational soul, intellect, will, and moral capacity, which remain even after the fall. Right? The fall from grace, the fall from heaven. If you understand the devil was an angel in that story. Now, likeness, our moral resemblance to God, which can be diminished or restored through sanctification. The ultimate fulfillment of the image D is found in Christ, the perfect image of the invisible God. This is Colossians chapter 1, verse 15. All right, that's the reference I was making to that last point. Now, in the Eastern Orthodox view, which I understand can somewhat derive from the Ethiopian Orthodox Church from the little bit of what I studied and what I understand. Humanity is called to be more like God through theosis or divinization. Okay, the image in the Eastern Orthodox view refers to what all humans inherently have: freedom, reason, and the capacity for communion with God. The likeness refers to what we are meant to grow into: holiness and participation in divine life. But sin distorts but doesn't destroy the image. Through Christ and the Holy Spirit, we can be restored and transformed. Again, in the Eastern Orthodox view, salvation then is just not forgiveness, but becoming partakers of the divine nature. That reference is in Second Peter chapter 1, verse 4. All right. Then we have the Protestant view. I actually went to I went to a school that was very big in their Protestant view. And this is something that I studied in my senior thesis and that I learned about, regarding the Holy Trinity and things like that. So this is something I'm fairly familiar with. But there's some variation generally in the Protestant view. Reformed Calvinist tradition. The image of God includes moral uprightness, righteousness, and the capacity to rule over creation responsibly. After the fall, this image was marred but not destroyed. Through Christ's redemption, the image is being renewed. Again, that reference comes from Colossians chapter 3, verse 10. And I ain't gonna go there, but again, like I say, like the Holy Trinity is a lot about, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and it has to do with Christ's redemption. Then we have the Lutheran tradition also emphasizes that the image of God was lost in the fall and it is restored through faith and regeneration in Christ. The evangelical perspective, which broadly focuses on dignity, moral agency, and relationality as aspects of the image, often links the doctrine of the image of God with human rights and the sanctity of life. All right, all of that is in the Protestant view, which brings us to number four, the modern theological expansions. In the modern theological expansions, many 20th to 21st century theologians across traditions also emphasize relational aspect. My bad. Relational aspect. Humans mirror God's relational nature, Father, Son, Spirit, through community and love. Functional aspect. To bear God's image means to represent his rule, to care for creation and act as stewards, right? Then we have a Christnocentric aspect, which Jesus is the true image of God, and we are restored to that image by being united with him. Okay, for a lot of people that might have been a lie, but those are the different religious aspects that I kind of gathered my information and my summaries about, and I'm just presenting that to y'all from that perspective, right? So then I go a little deeper, and then I learn about the science, and then I started asking questions, right? So I'm learning about the human body, anatomy, physiology, biology, chemistry, all of these things, and it started to pose questions, right? We have an immune system, we have a nervous system, we have all of these things as above, so below. And I started thinking, like, okay, everything's interconnected. So I had to ask, all right, we essentially are made from the earth. At least that's what literature says. So I started thinking, what is in the earth that is in us, right? As above, so below. That's just my thought process. And then I started to ask what elements are present in nature and the human body, right? So of course we got oxygen at approximately 65%. Okay. That's obvious. We have carbon at about 18%. We have hydrogen at about 10%. Now, obviously, we know what happens when you have hydrogen and two oxygens. That makes water. So that's the majority of what we have in the earth and in the human body. You can't live without it. But we also have things like nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, so on and so forth. Okay. A lot of different things. So whatever's in the earth is also in us, which means we're all interconnected. All right. So let me give y'all another secular perspective, right? Um, a secular perspective that we can look at is we are made of stardust. The elements heavier than hydrogen and helium, like carbon and oxygen, iron, calcium, were forged in the cores of ancient stars through nuclear fusion and released when those stars exploded. supernova. So the same atoms in your blood and bones once existed in stars. A beautiful scientific link between cosmos and life. That's a secular perspective we could take it from. Do I necessarily understand all that? I'm gonna be honest, like I can't say I do or I don't believe it because I'm not big into anything nuclear, right? So I can't say I understand science and math at that level, right? I'm not even finna pretend like my understanding is at that level. But I do kind of understand what it's saying when it mentions the scientific link between the cosmos and life, right? So I do believe that we have a connection between humans and nature, though. So the same 25 elements that make up the human body are also found in soil, plants, oceans, and the atmosphere, right? So, for instance, plants absorb minerals and water. Animals eat plants. We eat both, which the elements cycle endlessly through the biosphere. If that makes sense to some, then it makes sense to some, but it definitely makes sense to me. So I can agree with that. I can get down with that. And then a little bit deeper, I started thinking after I had read a book about the brain and how it's wired and how all these different things are interconnected. And then that led me to the nervous system as a product of nature, right? So a evolutionary connection. The human nervous system is the result of billions of years of natural evolution. If you don't believe in evolution, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not saying evolution from monkeys or whatever that story was, or something come down and a big comet hitting the earth and all that stuff. We ain't going there. But we just talking about natural evolution of the human body and the human brain, right? So early celled, early single-celled organisms use simple electrical and chemical signals to sense their environment, precursors to neurons. Those are all true. Like if you know anything about the brain, you understand that. Over time, these evolved into nerve networks, then central nervous systems, leading up to the complex human brain and spinal cord. If you understand, like I say again, if you understand the different parts of the brain, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, all that gray matter, all that stuff like that continuously developed over time as our brain continued to wire and fire through different networks in our brain, and making different connections, firing with synapses and all those different things, then you understand that, right? We had to learn different things and learn different things, trial and error, which inevitably contributed to our evolution. Now, this means our nervous system is nature's most advanced communication network. Now we have the ecological connection. Our nervous system constantly interacts with the natural environment. Like, for instance, our eyes sense light from the sun, our ears detect sound waves, vibrations in air or water, skin senses temperature, pressure, and pain. The brain processes all of this to help us survive and adapt to the natural world. So, your brain is literally wired to understand nature, light, sound, motion, rhythm, even the cycles of day and night, our circadian rhythm, things like that. All right. Now, let's move on to a little bit more. The nervous system and science. Again, this was another question that led me to do more research, right? The physics and electricity. For instance, nerve cells or neurons communicate using electrical impulses called action potentials. Tiny voltage changes across membranes. These impulses rely on ions, sodium, potassium, calcium, chloride, which are natural elements found in the earth and sea. Okay. This makes neuroscience deeply tied to electromagnetism and physics. I'm just gonna be honest again, y'all. I'm not there yet. I don't truly and fully understand all of physics or metaphysics, but as I continuously develop and learn more about science and study different literatures and dive deep and more to the book, then I feel like all of this will come together to help me have a better understanding. Okay. Then we have the chemistry. Communication between neurons happens at synapses, where chemicals called neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin transmit signals. These are organic molecules, natural compounds made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and other elements. Many natural substances like caffeine, morphine, or even certain plants affect the nervous system because they mimic or interfere with these neurotransmitters. Um, Also in the book Evolve Your Brain, I read about that too. Like often people who are diagnosed with, like, I think it's ADD or ADHD, they diagnose them as having a issue in their brain, but it's not necessarily an issue. It's just that the different electrical impulses, they fire different, right, through the synapses in the brains. They fire different. So it's not that those people with who are being diagnosed with that have a problem. It's just literally that their brain is wired different. Everything fires different for them. So that's why learning comes at a different speed for them. Learning comes at a different rate for them. Their span of attention is different from others, right? It's not that something's wrong with them, they're just different. Okay, but that's just me throwing a little something in there. All right, now we have biology and systems science. The nervous system exemplifies systems biology, a network where each part, brain, spinal cord, peripheral nerves, communicates with others in feedback loops. It mirrors natural ecosystems. So neurons equal organisms, synapses equals connections, neural networks equals ecosystems of information flow. All right. All of those tie into biology and system science. Then next, deeper into the discussion, we get interconnectedness with the natural world. Okay, so this is a little bit of chemistry, right? I know y'all ain't come to hear me preach. I know y'all ain't here to come give me y'all ain't come to hear me give a lecture. But I'm truly interested in these things, and I hope that some people out there find this interesting as well. The same elements that carry nerve impulses. So we have sodium, potassium, we have calcium, chlorine or chloride, come from minerals and salts found in oceans and soil, direct gifts of nature. The circadian rhythm, which is the sleep wake cycle, is tuned to the Earth's rotation and sunlight. Our sensory systems evolved to perceive nature, colors of vegetation, sounds of predators or rainfall, the scent of flood or flowers. Even our stress response, our fight or flight, originated as a survival mechanism in the wild. And that's again tied into where I said you don't necessarily have to believe in the evolution that we probably learned in elementary school, but natural selection and evolution of human beings is a thing. It really is. I hate to say it like that, but if you don't believe in it, you just don't. But it is a thing. Okay, so here's how we can connect it out in short, right? The human nervous system is nature's way of becoming aware of itself through science. We study that awareness, and in doing so, the universe studies its own consciousness. That's my big thing. If any of y'all know about the music side of me, then you know about that. Conscious thoughts is a way of life. But that's all I'm coming to y'all tonight with, man. That's all I wanted to bring y'all. Just asking these different things, right? Bringing you different perspectives. Not that I'm taking a particular side or I'm speaking from a particular side. I'm just saying that through my short time on this planet, these are the things that I'm learning. These are the questions that I'm asking, and this is how I tied out and together to give me a better understanding of God's image, His nature, His being, His just everything that encapsulates what we call God, right? And if I had to go out on a whim and answer my own question, are we made in God's image? I would say yes. But again, just my perspective, I have to think that this is an androgynous being that we're speaking of, right? I have to. Now, if we're talking about characteristics and personality traits, that's a different story. If we're talking about literature within itself, that's a different thing. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I'm not going that deep into it today. I'm just coming to pose a question to y'all and get y'all perspective and get y'all thoughts and what y'all think and start a discussion, right? So, with that being said, I hope y'all have a great day. I hope y'all have a great night. I hope y'all loving life, enjoying. I hope you're keeping yourself healthy, getting some sleep, drinking water, all those good things, exercising. And I love y'all. Drop a comment, leave a like, share the video if you want. And with that being said, I'm out.